As we get closer and closer to the start of the NBA season, the more excited we become as NBA fans to see our teams and how the changes they made over the offseason will shake out during the regular season. And for the Chicago Bulls, who didn't make a ton of moves, at least relative to last offseason, there is a common belief around the Bulls beat that the roster is all but set and there likely aren't going to be any additional changes made aside from the training camp invitations. I believe there is only one more two-way spot open, but the 15-man roster for the most part is complete. However, as a Bulls fan who wants to see my team play at the highest level possible, I am not ruling out the hope of the front office making a trade to fix some of the deficiencies on this team. And there is one trade in particular that I would love to see the Bulls make, and that's what we'll be talking about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now let me start by saying that I do think the Bulls are likely done making any major moves. Like, this isn't me saying that I think this trade is going to happen. More so, I just want it to happen, and I think it would really be an upgrade to the roster. Now, with the additions of the Bulls adding in Andre Drummond and Goran Dragic, the Bulls added some size and getting a backup five behind Vucevic with Drummond, which will help their rebounding and to an extent their shot blocking, although Drummond isn't the shot blocker he once was. And they also added some veteran experience in the backcourt with some playmaking and scoring in Goran Dragic. But neither of these moves addressed the Bulls' needs for rim protection and shooting, which they severely lacked last season, and it really impacted their ability to compete against the best teams in the league. Didn't help that the Bulls' best three-point shooter was out for most of the season in Lonzo Ball, and hopefully with Lonzo coming back healthy, that will solve some of their shooting woes. And when I say shooting, I'm really just talking about outside sharpshooter who can play off the ball and take some of the focus away from DeMar and Zach, where they're not constantly being double-teamed. Because we all know DeMar and Zach are great shooters, but I'm mainly talking about off-ball catch-and-shoot shooting is what the Bulls really could use. And when you talk about rim protection, because I know some have been saying, well, Andre Drummond is a rim protector. He really isn't anymore. Maybe back when he was an all-star, when he was more mobile, defended well in the post, was a better shot blocker, sure, but now I would consider him to just be an average rim protector at best, really because of his ability to clean the glass, and he's still an elite rebounder. But even that aside, rim protection is still a hole left in this roster, as well as just size in general. More specifically at the 4 spot, really the only power forward on this team is Patrick Williams, who I know some will say he really could be more of a small forward anyway. That's what he played his entire rookie season, but Pat is really the only guy. Yes, DeMar can play the 4 as well. He did a lot last season in San Antonio. Javonte Green stepped up well in playing the 4 when Pat was injured last year. So did Alex Caruso. Derrick Jones Jr. got some run at the 4 and 5. And sure, maybe the Bulls want to go small. They played a lot of small ball last season, but small ball, when they were going up against the best teams in the league last season, did not produce the best results. The Bulls ended up getting killed on the pick and roll and also gave up way too many second chance points because of their inability to rebound. They were one of the worst teams in the league last season in allowing offensive rebounds. You cannot have that if you want to be a contending team. So here's the thing, as I'm sure some of you are probably saying, get to the point already, what's the trade? And although I've made a couple of videos on some trades the Bulls should make given their current makeup of the roster, this is actually a trade I haven't discussed previously, and that's the Bulls trading for Utah Jazz forward Bojan Bogdanovic. Bogdanovic is a 6'7" forward who can play the 3 or 4, a savvy veteran who has been in the league a while, although yes, he's older, he's 33, which isn't ideal, but then again, it kind of fits the Bulls' timeline with DeMar and Vucevic. Vucevic is on an expiring deal, DeMar has 2 more years left on his deal, so if you're trying to contend now, while you still have these guys, you kind of have to go for the more established veterans, at least where it makes sense, and you don't have to give up too much for them in return. But look, Bogdanovic is one of these guys who solves multiple needs for the Bulls. One being shooting. He's one of the more consistent outside shooters in the league, shooting near 40% from 3 on his career at over 5 attempts per game. Last season, he shot near 39% on 6.8 attempts. That is very solid efficiency with the number of 3s that he takes. And because of his outside shooting, he also helps space the floor for guys like DeMar and Zach to cut and drive to the hoop. Also, just another sharpshooter to draw defenses away from DeMar and Zach when they're always getting double teamed. But aside from his shooting, he also has the size. Bulls need more power forwards. Bogdanovic, like I mentioned, can play the 3 or 4, give you some additional rebounding. Yes, Bogdanovic is not a good defender. He is by no means a rim protector, which is an area the Bulls would still need to solve for. So yes, Bogdanovic is not going to help on the defensive end. Like, you want to hear an insane stat, actually? Bogdanovic in his entire NBA career of 603 games has a total of just 42 blocks. He played 69 games last season and had 1 block all season long. Even Coby White is out there blocking more shots than Bojan. So yes, I'm fully aware that this trade would not address the Bulls' need for defense down low, but it most certainly addresses shooting and added depth at the 4. The one downside though in this trade is it would likely slow down Patrick Williams' development, as I would have a hard time seeing Billy Donovan starting Patrick over Bojan, as Bogdanovic is a proven starter in this league and a starter on a good team who averaged 18 points per game last season. I mean, sure, you could still start Patrick and have Bogdanovic come off the bench, but my guess is he likely would not be happy in that type of role after really being a primary starter for the last 7 seasons in the NBA. But who knows? Maybe he would be okay with taking a back seat to a younger player, given he's 33 now, and he really could be that go-to scorer coming off the bench. And to be honest, as much as Bogdanovic probably should start over Patrick, at least in terms of experience, but a Bulls starting lineup consisting of Vucevic, Bogdanovic, DeRozan, Lavine would be a disaster on the defensive end. And having Pat in that first unit would actually make more sense, while Bogdanovic could play in a heavy defensive second unit with guys like Caruso, Io, to an extent Drummond, Dalen Terry, even Derrick Jones Jr. That would probably be better and a more even rotation in terms of offense and defense. But we all know Billy Donovan likes his veterans. Now the question is, what would a trade look like for Bojan Bogdanovic? What would the Bulls have to give up? Because Bogdanovic has some pretty good trade value. He's on an expiring contract making $20 million, which is steep, but it's not like it's a long-term commitment that, you have to worry about should things not work out. And you likely could re-sign him on a more team-friendly deal as he heads into his mid-30s. But aside from being on an expiring contract, he's a valuable player for all the reasons that I mentioned previously, an experienced sharpshooter off the wing, but he has the size needed that doesn't make him an easy target to defend for smaller wings, and he's one of the more efficient scorers in the league. Now, of course, we all know who is running the Jazz, Danny Ainge, whose goal in life as an executive is to fleece teams as much as he possibly can. He did back when he was running the Celtics and stacking up draft picks and trading away older players past their primes, and of course you saw it more recently with the insane haul of picks that the Jazz were able to acquire in trading Rudy Gobert. Like, the man is gonna want to walk away from any trade thinking, yeah, I got the best of that exchange. And based on where he's positioning the Jazz, starting with trading Gobert, you saw they recently traded Patrick Beverley as well. We already know they're looking to trade Donovan Mitchell with the discussions being had with the New York Knicks. Like, it's clear the Jazz are going into a full-blown rebuild, stacking draft picks and young players. Any player who is over 29 is likely getting moved, if not during the offseason, at some point during the season before the trade deadline. So based on the direction the Jazz are heading, they're gonna want young players and draft capital. So in this instance, a trade that may sway the Jazz to make this move in shipping Bogdanovic is sending Coby White, Derrick Jones Jr., Tony Bradley, Marko Simonovic, and the Bulls' first-round pick from Portland that is, of course, lottery protected. Now, this trade is really for the Jazz getting Coby White and that first-round pick. The other players added to this package are really more for salary filler purposes to match Bogdanovic's contract. And to be honest, trading that first-round pick for Bogdanovic as well as the package to go with it is probably too much. But you have to remember who you're working with here, and the Jazz are not even going to consider this deal unless it includes a pick. And look, a first-round pick, which will likely convey this upcoming draft in 2023, as it looks like the Blazers are probably going to make the playoffs with the moves they made and Lillard getting back to health. But a first-round pick along with a young player in Coby White, who's only 22, a scoring guard who still has some upside, you're getting that in exchange for a guy who is on an expiring contract that you know you're not going to re-sign in 2023. I'm talking about the Jazz, by the way. A first-round pick in Coby White instead of losing him for nothing to have him walk in free agency. And then for the Bulls, yes, you're risking trading a first-round pick and Coby White for a guy who is 33 years old, will likely start declining soon, and there is no guarantee that you can re-sign him next offseason, and at that point, you just lost a first-round pick and a young player for a one-year rental. But at the same time, I mean, you guys know my stance on draft picks. The NBA draft, in my view, is an absolute crapshoot. You go through the history of the draft and all the redrafts that are conducted after the fact of who should have gone before who was a bust, who was a steal. Yes, you're more likely to hit on a player in the draft when it's a high pick, but even then, that's not a guarantee. And for the Bulls and that draft pick that they're owed from Portland as part of the Lowry Markkanen sign-in trade, it is lottery protected, meaning the absolute highest the pick could convey to is the number 15 pick. That's if the Blazers make the playoffs but have the worst record of all the playoff teams. The pick will fall somewhere in the 50 to 30 range, most likely in the late teens, early 20s if I had to guess based on where Portland is going to stack up relative to the rest of the Western Conference. And yes, it would be nice to have that pick. And maybe the Bulls hit on that pick and get an absolute steal in the draft that turns out into a star player, but the chances of that actually happening are very unlikely when you look back at the history of the draft and star players being selected outside of the lottery. And for the Bulls, the focus right now should not be on project players who may take 5 years to develop. The Bulls are in win now mode. Some may not agree with that, but when the Bulls traded for Vucevic, brought in DeMar, brought in Lonzo, Caruso, they signed Zach to a 5-year max, traded away multiple first-round picks, traded away Wendell Carter Jr., Lauri Markkanen, they accelerated their timeline to win in the immediate term. Draft picks should be something they are not concerned about. And I know some will say, well, you don't want to just focus on the now, you still need to think about your future. The Bulls still have Patrick Williams, they still have Dosunmu, they still have Dalen Terry. Lonzo Ball is still young, only 24. Zach is in his prime, he's 27. It's not like your future is non-existent if you trade another first-round pick that isn't even going to be a top 14 pick. And for Coby White, I mean, we've all kind of seen the writing on the wall for Coby with all the moves the Bulls have made in signing Lonzo, signing Caruso, drafting Ayo, more recently drafting Dalen Terry, signing Goran Dragic. Like, it's hard to see where Coby is going to fit on this roster both for now and in the long term. Not only that, but he's also on an expiring deal to his rookie scale contract. He's going to be a restricted free agent, and based on the construction of the roster, I have a hard time seeing the Bulls extending him. So rather than losing him for nothing, hey, might as well get a shooting big who has a proven track record on a winning team. So honestly, I really do think that this trade will work out for both sides. The Jazz get another first-round pick. We know Danny Ainge loves stacking draft picks. They get a young player in Coby White that they could even trade at the deadline if they really wanted to for more assets, and even Derrick Jones Jr. Like, let's not act like he's just a throw-in in this deal. A very capable, versatile, athletic defender that you're getting on a team-friendly deal. You're getting all of that for a guy who isn't going to be a part of your long-term future in Bojan Bogdanovic. And for the Bulls, getting a true shooter, a guy who also gives you the size and depth at the 4 spot, a guy who you can potentially re-sign to a more team-friendly deal should things go well, and you're giving up a player who doesn't fit the roster, and you're likely not going to extend anyway, and a draft pick, which isn't a focus given the timeline of the team. I think it works for both sides, and to be honest, I am all in for this trade happening, more so than some of the other mock trades that I've discussed in the past on this channel. But I want to know what you guys think of the Bulls trading for Bogdanovic. Is the package being offered too much, or maybe it is even too little for Bogdanovic? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.